Tax Podcast, SDLT Mixed Use and Recent Cases with John Kavanagh.
Welcome back to the UK Tax Podcast. My name is John Kavanagh and I am a chartered tax advisor with my own private practice. I mainly advise other professional advisors, but also private and business clients. I've been working in tax for 40 years and have been a chartered tax advisor for well over 30 years, so I hope this podcast will offer something useful. In this episode, I will examine some recent tribunal decisions that show how HMRC and the courts are distinguishing between residential and non-residential property in the context of mixed-use claims. Mixed-use status for SDLT applies where a property includes both residential and non-residential elements. These transactions are taxed solely at the non-residential rates. They are not subject to the 3% surcharge that applies to additional residential properties or the additional 2% rate applying to non-residents as defined for SDLT. That difference can be extremely significant in terms of the tax payable. A key statutory concept here is that residential property includes any building used or suitable for use as a dwelling, together with land forming part of the garden or grounds. Recent decisions show how this definition is being interpreted in practice. In the Tretyakov case, decided in December 2024, the taxpayer bought a high-value property in Knightsbridge. The ground floor had a planning restriction against residential use and was fitted out with a private bar, wine cellar, cinema room and other leisure features. These were used for personal entertainment. Despite the planning restriction, the tribunal found that the ground floor was physically and functionally part of the main dwelling. It was internally connected by a central staircase and there was no separate access. Marketing materials described the ground floor as part of a luxury private residence, emphasizing its use for entertaining rather than any separate commercial function. Perhaps unsurprisingly, that helped to support the tribunal's conclusion that the property was residential throughout. In the Suterwalla case, the tribunal found for the taxpayers the buyers acquired a house and a separate paddock. On completion, they granted a grazing lease over the paddock. The land was on a separate title, physically fenced off and not connected to the garden. There was evidence of agricultural use. The tribunal accepted that the paddock had a genuine commercial use. It was therefore not part of the residential grounds, and the property was accordingly held to be mixed use. In this case, there was no contrivance. The tribunal found a clear boundary, physically, legally and functionally, between the house and the land. In the case of Ridgway, the buyer acquired a property with a main house and an annex. The annex had been leased to a third party for commercial use immediately before completion. The lease in question was short, and the building still looked and functioned like residential accommodation. The tribunal decided that the annex was suitable for use as a dwelling and as part of the same residential unit. They therefore rejected the mixed-use claim. All three decisions stressed the same fundamental point in their different ways, namely that substance matters more than form in this context. A commercial lease or planning classification isn't likely to be enough on its own, as tribunals look at actual use, integration, layout and presentation at the time of completion. Mixed-use claims generally succeed only when there is genuine, independent, non-residential use that can be clearly distinguished from the residential element. For advisors, that means reviewing the facts of any case carefully. Separate titles, access points or leases help, but only if they reflect a real separation in character and use. I'm John Kavanagh, and I'd like to thank you for listening to this episode of the UK Tax Podcast. More episodes are on the way, and I very much hope you will join me again for the next and future episode.